House Bill 563, a lot of debate, a lot of changes, including changes made on the House floor. I guess I can ask this to both you and Mr. McCoy. I mean, after all the debate, after all the changes, do you feel like House Bill 563 is a good bill that addresses the concerns that I know you've heard from parents?
I do think it's a good bill. I think that I think everybody was left with wanting a little something that they didn't get. And generally, I think that that's sometimes the sign of good policy is when nobody's completely happy about it. There are some public school educators that are ecstatic about it. There are some that are not. There are some private school advocates that are happy about it. There are some that are not. At the end of the day, it was our intent to try to help kids and help give parents, particularly lower socioeconomic status, options. And I think this bill does that. And so, therefore, I think it's a good bill that will do a lot for the poor families of this state.
We were not able to see any of the amendments. I'm specifically about Representative Miller's amendment. I want to make sure I understand it correctly. That allows for it to be applied to private schools in Fayette, Jefferson, and Kenton counties.
Correct.
And it's for private schools and
Public and private.
Public and private. Okay. I just wanted to clarify that to make sure that I understood it correctly. In terms of, you had a couple of bills that you got out of committee today that were on the floor. One of them is your HJ House Joint Resolution.
77.
Yeah, 77. And specifically about that, that goes into effect should you all win in court, correct?
Correct.
And not on that list are mask mandates or any kind of capacity restrictions of businesses, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Can you sound off on that? I mean, why were those two left off?
You know, there were actually a whole bunch that were left off, and these were things that did not speak to a lot of those. You heard me say that on the floor. That we don't have any idea how long this is going to be in the courts. We just know that the courts kind of hold this in their hands at this point, and we felt like at the minimum, some of these executive orders that were put in place that businesses and individuals are relying on to keep them in compliance, to keep them from being fined, those things, we had to guarantee those individuals that, look, nothing can happen for 60 days. We're not speaking to the rest because, again, unfortunately, the courts hold those cards, but we felt like it was important that those things that businesses and individuals are relying on they'd have at least the assurance that those would last 60 days.
And then there's also Representative Maddox's bill. Is this, I mean, I don't know if this is even how it works, but like, is this a way that makes it your case stronger in the court system because of the legislation that just passed today?
I don't think that it necessarily makes it strong. I think we have a very strong case to begin with. But I do think that there are some items that have come to light since the passage of Senate Bill 1 that deserved attention. And a lot of that went back to the Acre decision and specifically addressed some of those issues that the court held in that case.
And then, yes, how come you haven't appealed yet? What's the process?
We're still looking at all possible options. There's the case that's in Scott County that's also pending, and just trying to figure out the best way forward on it. We still very well may appeal. We may also just pass additional legislation and go that route.
Slow down on that one. So,
I have a few more questions on House Bill 563.
sorry.
Well, I guess I'll try to wrap them all into one.
Sorry, Joe.
The Miller amendments, I know that there were issues with the idea of private school vouchers. I know this bill isn't quite that bill, but I imagine a lot of the complaints about that provision or that kind of bill could also apply to Miller's amendment. How do you explain or how do you kind of combat that issue? And also, are you concerned at all about possibly creating a system that only applies to 3 counties the way that it is?
No, I think, and I'll let Representative McCoy address that to some degree, but I think that the intent, again, was to help as many kids as possible. I think that you saw that as once the initial amendment failed, I think that there was a belief that, well, if we can't help every county, then let's try to help those that have probably been asking for it the most and are most disproportionately affected whether it be poverty or minority populations, to help those counties, because I do believe that those pleas have been heard by members of I think both caucuses and both parties, that genuinely those families and those kids don't have other choices and need it. So, Chad, you want to comment?
Yeah, I'll just say this. You know, the use of the rhetoric we hear about vouchers is unfortunate. There's nothing remotely like a voucher in the EOA bill. And just so everybody really understands, Jerry's amendment added an additional thing to the list that EOAs can go for. And, you know, there were 12. You get to the last one, and now what he added was for counties greater than 150, they could do non-private tuition. But all the other stuff still applies to every kid throughout the state.
And I do want to ask about the kindergarten amendment. As far as the procedural matter, I was a little bit confused as far as the 60 vote threshold. Can you kind of explain what that is all about, and do you feel like that might affect its chances of actually passing in the Senate, or do you feel like the kindergarten provision might end up being dropped in the Senate because of that?
It's something that we're going to have to discuss and maybe potentially find another way, another mechanism to put that language on at the end of the day, because the ruling that I made, the Constitution says that before any bill can become law, in the passage during a short session, you have to have 60 votes that appropriates funds or raises revenues. It didn't meet that threshold. So if that, and the first part of the bill, the 563, the House Committee Substitute, and Amendment 14 and 20 would not have been an appropriation. The courts have been pretty consistent that these types of measures do not justify an appropriation or raising of revenue. So it wouldn't have required 60 votes. When that amendment went on, it did undeniably cause an appropriation, a rather large one. And so if that amendment stays on in the Senate, we will have to do one of two things. We will either have to get 60 votes to concur with whatever they send back to us for final passage, or the bill would no longer be in order if it contains that amendment.
Does the Senate have a similar vote threshold that it hasn't passed that kind?
It's a constitutional requirement, yes, that any legislator vote that raises revenue or appropriates money in short sessions requires a 60% threshold.
In short sessions specifically? Yes.
Okay, we can clarify anything else, but we've got to go. So do you want one last one?
I mean, my only question was what you had just said about maybe doing it through statute rather than appealing. In terms of the lawsuit, I mean, because you only have like 3 days left now. What's that going to look like?
I can't tell you exactly what form that may take. There are several bills that are alive and in process that we could put some additional language on, including the bill that we passed out today.
All right, thanks.